So yesterday I came across this video, Christy Forbes explaining PDA, and it completely hit the nail on the head. Totally. Wow. So I decided to make a video about it.
Talk about understanding the PDA brain and demand pressure. PDA as a neurobiological response to our environment and its threat on our autonomy and freedom. It's important that we separate the person from the PDA brain, because in much the same way that we respond with avoidance to demand pressure from other people, implied expectations that we put on ourselves have the same impact. Often I'm unable to engage in activities that I would like to because I've got way too excited about it, or I've popped it on the calendar or in my diary, or I've thought about it too much, and my hypersensitive neuroception, neuro meaning brain, ception, what I receive from the environment and my surroundings, is alerted that my excitement is a threat.
Yep.
So what happens is that our amygdala, the part of our brain that takes in information from our surroundings and assesses how much of it is a threat, is largely overactive in the PDA brain. So this means that we receive way more of our environment as a threat than the average person, even than the average non-autistic person. Not that there's such a thing. There's no such thing as an average non-autistic person, for lack of better expression or words. Most people think that we have a need to be in control. And whilst that is true, our demand avoidance is largely driven by our inherent need, our inherent organic, intrinsic need for autonomy. So that means that we are born with a neurobiology, we are born as beings who require more say over our lives, even when we are children. So we're born this way. Many people ask me, does trauma cause PDA? No, it doesn't. The PDA brain in its structure is very similar to the functionality of a brain that has experienced trauma, however. So we have a very fragile neuroception. And it's not just about our brain, it's about our neurobiology. So our brain sends messaging to our body when it perceives a threat, and we are activated into fight, flight, which is most of the time. Our brain might say, when our mother asks us what we'd like for breakfast, our brain might very quickly, in a split second, message to our body, don't answer. Or we might say, I don't know, I don't want to eat, I don't want to talk about it. And this will change. This will change from moment to moment because our anxiety fluctuates. And whilst most people believe that demand avoidance is driven by anxiety, for me it is not. My demand avoidance is driven by my inherent need for autonomy and freedom. So my brain tells me that I'm either being controlled or I'm in control. And when I say in control, what I mean is I have autonomy in this moment. I have the freedom to choose for myself.
Yes, exactly.
That is what control is. having the freedom to choose for ourselves.
Yes, yes.
So whilst it seems
So
that we
true.
are grasping for control of other people, places and things, really at the heart of that, what we want the most is control over ourselves.
Yes. So right now, that fucking neighbor from above, she is singing and it's not even in tune, and it makes me so fucking angry because I cannot influence that. God damn it, this is so annoying. That fucking noise from above. That's why I'm nocturnal as well, because then I have no noise from above. It drives me crazy. It makes me so angry. It's so annoying. It's just noise. And I hate it. So all I can do from here is making more noise. I have played heavy metal music as loud as I can make the computer play it. I am not a fan of heavy metal music, but I think that's the loudest music that exists. Just to make some kind of noise and make my neighbor bloody stop singing. It usually doesn't help until she gets tired and moves to another room, then I have my peace. I don't know why people have to make tunes that are not even a melody. That's so weird. And it's so annoying. It's so annoying. Because it makes no sense. There is no pattern. It's not nice for the ear. It's just notes. Random. Not beautiful. And I'm forced to listen to it, and I hate it. Man, I could strangle her. So what I just did, I felt this makes a lot of noise, it's even louder than heavy metal music. I took my hammer and started to hammer on a piece of wood for about 3 minutes or so. Finally, neighbor moved to another room, it seems. Now I have my silence, finally. Wow, that was annoying. Such a relief to have no sound from above. Such a relief. That's so amazing what it does. Since I'm so triggered by noise imposed on me, I am really loving it to stay up until everybody else is asleep, and then there is that sweet silence. It's wonderful to have no noise from above and no noise coming from the outside. And it's so calming on the system. Finally, you feel safe. You can relax.
I'm tired, downtime required. Am I right or am I right?
Yes.
Nighttime, I'm hanging out to just have a bit of downtime. I'm autistic and ADHD and PDA, and that's my time where I just like to chill out. I like to get in front of a screen because I find screens really regulating and calming and focusing. So I might jump on my computer, I might watch a bit of telly. But we cannot exercise control over ourselves and have the amount of autonomy that our neurobiology requires unless we create a barrier between ourselves and other people, places and things, which is where avoidance comes in. The PDA brain does not know the difference between standing in front of a snake and having fight, flight, freeze or fawn activated, or someone saying, it's time to go to school, or come and eat your breakfast, or pay that bill. So often what will happen is that we can also be mistaken as having extremely challenged executive functioning. And this can absolutely be true because many of us also fit the ADHD profile. However, demand avoidance for a PDA can be mistaken with executive functioning challenges. An example of this is not paying bills on time. It's not about forgetting to pay the bills. It's that somebody demands that we pay a bill by a certain time. And so we feel that our autonomy, our freedom to choose for ourselves in that moment has been compromised, and our brain messages to us that it is not safe, that we are threatened. There are also misunderstandings about anxiety, how anxiety looks for a PDA. There's generalized anxiety, and generalized anxiety is something that most people will experience at some stage of their lives. Autistic people experience it far more often, and that is the anxiety that comes about as a form of nervousness or apprehension, going into new situations, unfamiliar territory. And then for those of us with a pathologically demand avoidant profile is also the inherent bolt of anger that shoots through
rage
on the receiving end of a demand, what our brain perceives as a demand. So if somebody says to me, I want you to think about taking the rubbish out, or can you take the rubbish out? I might feel what I know is common for PDAs, and that is this very quick sensation of rage or anger just shoot through my whole being.
Yes.
And the feeling behind it is like, how dare you? Who the F do you think you are to tell me what to do? What? I'm sorry, I did not ask for your opinion or your advice. I have a hard time with engaging with friends and sharing parts of my life with them and then them giving me answers or solutions. That's not what a PDA is looking for. We're looking for someone to hold space for us. So the whole understanding of what demands are is completely misunderstood as well. A demand is not just somebody telling us what to do. It's any kind of expectation. This even extends into sleep. So if our brain catches on to the fact that at a certain time of day we are expected to do a certain thing, we do not comply because our brain receives it as a threat.
So one example comes to mind when I visit my mother, who lives in a different city, which takes me about 2 hours to get there from door to door, approximately. She sometimes asks, when will you be there? And I can never answer that question. And even if I say, okay, I'll be there at 2 or 3, I never make it on time. I procrastinate, and then it happens I have arrived at my mother's place at 4, at 5, at 6. I just couldn't get myself to get into the shower, dress, and take the train. I just couldn't do it, and it took so much time. Sometimes I even called my mother saying I would come the next day.
And that's because it's a demand. Sleeping is a demand. Eating can be a demand. Showering, brushing our teeth, leaving the house, engaging in therapies. Demand avoidance. Pathological demand avoidance. Whilst I really don't like the terminology and the label because it skims the surface and it's based on behaviorism, we're focusing on behavior, and the most predominant behavior is demand avoidance. There is so much more underneath all of that, so much more that we're not learning about, so much more that people aren't talking about. We're so fixated on the fact that these little people will not do as they're told. And there is a whole neurobiological process behind it that they do not have a conscious choice in. It's not about us choosing, oh, well, that doesn't feel like I'm free, so I'm not going to do that. It is this survival instinct.
Yes.
It's a very fast thing that happens like that, and it's taken me as a 40-year-old woman my entire life to have the understanding that I have of how my brain and body work together. And the demand avoidant brain, the pathologically demand avoidant brain, understands that its one job is to keep me alive. And so when it perceives something as a threat, it is going to do everything in its power to prevent me from engaging with that demand.
This is a Facebook site somebody recommended to me, Sally Cat's Guide to PDA. So, people trying to control me, no matter how politely and regardless of their places in social hierarchy, it feels like an attack to me.
So it's important to separate the person's conscious thought process from the neurobiological response from our brain and body. There's both. Sometimes we do make conscious decisions about things. Sometimes we don't. Often we end up wearing labels like procrastinator, lazy, self-centered, insubordinate, disrespectful. When we are exposed to pressure that is ongoing, then we become, many of us become aggressive, or we completely shut down. And the demand avoidance heightens, and the anxiety escalates, and the threat response escalates, because the brain is receiving information that there's more and more threat. We are less and less safe.
Please don't think me stupid because I'm slow to pick up on things obvious to you. I pick up on many things you miss. Our brains are different. Neither is better, and neither is worse. Blissful self-isolation, freedom from schedules, extra quiet time, no social demands. Excitingly novel, happy pets, and all in an environment I have control of. Yeah, I can so relate to that. You can be yourself, and nobody is there to tell you what to do or how to be, what to say, how to behave. You can be yourself. You can choose what you want to do. You are free to just do some research. You are free to choose to follow your impulses and just do something. And nobody is in the way saying no. And you can get into your own rhythm. It's a flow. And the quiet space is my happy brain place. That's why I love to just disappear into my own head, because that's my space and nobody can enter. Nobody can invade my brain space. Especially when I'm out of the house and surrounded by people, at work, wherever I am, I have still my brain space, and that's my very private place. It's sacred. And that's what I do. Also, when I feel threatened, when it's too loud, too much of everything, I can indeed just disappear, lost in my own thought string, whatever that is. And then I can completely miss anything that goes on outside, around me. I think I must have developed this, however you want to call it, talent, when I grew up and my parents were fighting and I had no control over that. It was so much noise and I hated it and it made me sad. So what could I do about it? The only thing I could do is just disappear into my head and ignore what was going on outside of me. But that has the disadvantage that then when somebody calls you, you no longer hear it. And then they think you are disobedient, you don't listen, you do it on purpose. That's not true. It happens by accident because you learned so well to tune out all the distraction and you prefer to be in your own brain space. So you just don't react. And that brain space is really your safe place to go. When you feel threatened, you withdraw. That's the last option. You go there. You disappear.
Adults on the outside who are well-intentioned, meaning well, loving their children, worrying about their children, saying, well, this will work. If you try this, if you do more of this, you'll feel better. If you come out and eat with the family, we really miss you. Come out and spend time with us.
Yeah, my dad
Or,
always wanted me to do
why don't we go and
that.
visit your grandparents? Or why don't we go horse riding today?
Ah,
Or have you done your schoolwork yet? How about if I help you? You tell me what to write and I'll just write it. Those are all demands. Our brain receives all of that as demand pressure. And so the brain does what it's supposed to do, and it kicks into overdrive and goes, okay, I'm receiving demands here, threats. We're going to double down on this, and we're really going to go into self-preservation here. So we're not going to comply with even more requests from people. And often that results in then violent outbursts or aggression, swearing, self-harming, or shutdown.
yes, shutdown. I did that a lot.
Because inherently it's not so much about being disordered or fundamentally having something wrong with us. There are really wonderful qualities. An incredible drive for social justice and fairness and equity and equality. Compassion and empathy, even though sometimes it doesn't seem like we have that. When we're under an insurmountable amount of pressure, our feelings stop. We don't feel anything anymore. So when I was a young person, if I was under pressure all of the time, and it's important to know that when we're young, if we have a PDA profile, those are the most difficult years of our lives, because as children, that's when we're exposed to the most rules, restrictions, limitations. But it's important to know that when we're under pressure, our feelings don't work anymore. I can't feel anything when I am suffocating under what my brain perceives as threats and demands. It shuts off my emotional functioning and kicks into survival, so I no longer connect with emotions.
So, whatever my dad wanted to do with me, he was very social, so he liked to go somewhere or meet with people, and he always wanted to drag me with him. And Saturday afternoons, he always went shopping for the weekend, and he forced me to go with him. And I hated it because of the sensory overload on a Saturday afternoon. That was the most busy time ever. But I was forced to go with my dad. And he was a very dominant person. He was very demanding and very controlling. And he scared the shit out of me because he became aggressive and violent, which was an even bigger threat. So I had to obey. I basically shut down and just followed his direction, but internally I was screaming, "No!" And that's why this upbringing was so traumatic, because I always had to go against my own will. I wasn't allowed to stay home, which would have been beneficial. I had to follow my dad's dictate. He was like a dictator. He might have meant well at times. he thought that was the right thing to do, but then he reinforced his will on me. That was traumatic.
But it's because we are feeling like we're backed into a corner. Now, when you're a young person and you don't know you're a PDAer and you don't understand the way you are, that adds another layer of trauma and complexity, because we don't have the language to tell you. We don't have the language to tell you what's going on. All we can say is, I can't. Why can't you get in the car to come and visit Grandma and Grandpa? I can't. Why can't you brush your teeth? I can't. And if we're angry, we'll just say, no, I'm not brushing my effing teeth. I'm not. I'm not going to do it. And then, of course, you can imagine the consequences for being a young person and speaking like that, behaving like that. And then, of course, the cycle is that there's more pressure added on top. So we become even more demand avoidant. And then we completely shut down and disengage from life.
Yes.
This is why it's so important to understand the difference between demand avoidance associated with executive functioning and being autistic and autistic inertia and ADHD, and pathological demand avoidance. And like I said before, pathological demand avoidance, people will say to me, well, what do you think about the word pathological? I might be going against the grain here, but I think it's accurate. It is a pathological neurobiological way of being. The demand avoidance is pathological. That means it's there all of the time. That doesn't mean you'll see it all of the time. It doesn't mean it's expressed all of the time. We might go to school and be completely compliant and then come home and be completely demand avoidant. That's because we may be fawning or masking in one environment and compensating in another. So just because we can do something in one moment and then not do it in the next doesn't mean that we are not demand avoidant, pathologically demand avoidant. It is so complex and so misunderstood, and even inside of the autistic community, there are people speaking up to deny the existence of PDA, and this is damaging and detrimental to our children and to our community. It's not about comparison. It's not about superiority. PDA is real. It is so real. I have a PDA profile of autism. I will not deny my experience as a PDA to make other people feel comfortable or to fit in.
It's also about giving my permission. When I can decide and have the opportunity to say no or yes, then I might end up, after thinking it through and having had time to process it, I might end up saying yes.
24 years to realise this, that I need to be more autonomous rather than complying to rules and rank hierarchy structures. Oh yeah, hierarchy. Woof! Social hierarchies. Very, very difficult for us to get on board with as PDAs, because as soon as I even think about the concept of hierarchy, I think injustice.
Yep.
And discrimination.
Yeah.
Inauthenticity. Dishonesty. And something that PDAs value and need the most is total transparency and honesty. We see through the BS in life. Can the only way a PDA complies with a demand is if they are masking or fawning? No. No. So really it needs to be something that we initiate or that we direct.
So this is where we can agree, more or less. Unpressured, maybe we could go out when it's asked as a question and you can give your permission or not. Suggestion, same. Unpushy opinion, I'd quite like to go out. Consultation. Unassuming. You are welcome to come, but it's okay if you don't. Forbidding. You can't come. Yeah, then you can just agree or not. Helping somebody. I want to choose. That's very important.
But we need to know what's in it for us. We need to know why.
Yeah.
Why do we need to do this? It needs to make sense.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And language is important, the way requests are delivered.
Yes.
So that they're not received as demands.
Features of a PDA profile. That's from the PDA website. Autism is dimensional, meaning individual profiles can vary considerably depending on the combination of a person's strengths and difficulties across two key dimensions: how someone relates socially, the need for sameness, often resulting in repetitive or rigid thoughts and behaviors. People with PDA profile can appear to have better social understanding and communication skills than some other autistic people, and are often able to use this to their advantage. However, these apparent social abilities can often mask difficulty with processing and understanding communication and social situations. The distinctive features of a demand-avoidant profile include: resists and avoids the ordinary demands of life, uses social strategies as part of avoidance, for example, distracting, giving excuses, appears sociable but lacks some understanding, experiences excessive mood swings and impulsivity, appears comfortable in role play and pretense. So that's definitely not me. I definitely do not feel comfortable with role play and pretense. I hate it with a passion. To me, this is another demand. You have to pretend while someone is watching. Impossible. I just freeze. I just can't do it. Well, when I was younger, I was really extremely shy. and I had also selective mutism. So roleplay, that was absolutely impossible for me. I totally fell apart, like started to tremble, my legs shaking, my voice. It was more of a stuttering than, or no voice at all, just a shutdown. So I was deeply scared from roleplay, pretending to be something. However, when I was by myself as a kid, I had some imagination, and I had a paper village with Native Americans and horses, and they all had their names and characters. So that was some kind of role play, but it was done by my permission. So it was me who said, okay, this Native American is called by that name, he rides this horse has this name, and so on. So that's different. I was all by myself playing this pretend game in an Indian village. I was playing out different scenarios. They had adventures. They could go on a hunt for bison, or go steal horses, or whatever. It was all happening in my imagination, all by myself, and nobody was telling me to do so. So that's a big difference. However, if you get a script with a role of a person and you are supposed to act like that, I cannot do it. I cannot do it. Absolutely not. I just fall apart. That's very different. And I really have a very strong issue about not having a choice. About my personal space, my body, my life. Especially my body. Whatever gets in or touches it, I want to have a choice of saying no, giving permission, not being forced to do it. That's very, very, very challenged executive functioning at times. And that's why I was so super triggered, and I am still super triggered by the demand of my company to wear masks at work, against all scientific studies, and it's really a threat to my own health. That's not even being irrational, or what's the word? Well, it's rational. I have done research on it. I have found a lot of information how this is a threat to your health. And to me, that is very personal. If something or someone comes along and just says you have to do that, and I know it's not healthy to do that, I will not comply. I will say no. Because for me, it's all about quality of life and being as healthy as I can. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, eating the way I'm eating. And nobody has the right to come and say, "Ah, you have to do that," and ruin your health in the process. No way. I'm not doing it.